The moment the pen touched the paper, I felt nothing. No shaking hands. No lump in my throat. No sense of finality. Just silence. Not the peaceful kind, the hollow kind. The kind that makes refrigerators hum louder and ceiling fans sound like helicopters. I stared at my own signature. Leonard M. Quayle. Slanted. A little too spaced out. It looked like a stranger had signed it. My divorce was now legally official, and I was sitting on the other side of the table like some bored intern approving parking permits. Mallory didn't even show up. She sent her lawyer, of course. Neil something. The kind of guy who wears shirts that still have creases from dry cleaning. He smelled like aftershave and quiet arrogance. He slid the final envelope toward me like a waiter handing over the check at a cheap diner. "You've been very cooperative," he said. I think he thought that was a compliment. I nodded. I wanted to laugh. Because I had just given up everything, the house, the furniture, the retirement savings I'd built like a nervous squirrel for 17 years. I didn't even ask for the car. I walked to the courthouse that morning. Wore the same corduroy jacket Mallory used to say made me look like a sad professor. No one in that room knew the truth. Not Neil. Not the court clerk. Not even my now ex-wife. Especially not her. Because 5 days earlier, I sold something that changed my life. Something Mallory mocked every time I stayed up late or skipped a weekend trip with her friends. She used to call it my robot doodle. It was a patent. For a modular AI interface I'd worked on quietly, privately, on and off for almost a decade. I never told her I filed it. Never told her I pitched it. Never told her the offer came in from a defense tech firm based out of Colorado. $67 million. You'd think I'd be ecstatic. But no, that's not how betrayal feels. That's not how humiliation processes itself. Money doesn't fix the feeling that someone looked at your worst moment and decided that's who you truly are. See, when I lost my job, my regular, nothing special, mid-level product design role, Mallory didn't just walk out. She laughed. It was that cruel little half-snort she'd do when she was pretending to be supportive in public. Like a snake smile. "Of course you lost it," she said. "I always knew you weren't built for pressure." She didn't even lower her voice. I remember her pouring wine, still in her workout gear, saying it with her back turned. She didn't just leave, she upgraded. Told her friends I was emotionally small and financially obsolete. She actually said that at brunch. Her coworker texted me screenshots. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just nodded, told her I understood, and agreed to everything. Because I wanted her to believe she'd won. I wanted her to walk away smug, thinking she got the better deal. And for months, she did. Until she saw me again. Not on purpose. Not in court. But in a very public, very expensive place where people like her don't expect to see ghosts. But we're not there yet. Let me take you back. To the moment just before the fall. The week before the divorce was finalized. I spent a lot of time alone in her kitchen. The cabinets were still filled with plates she chose. Mugs that said things like "Boss Lady" and "Slay all day." I didn't throw them out. I didn't smash them. I just stood there each morning, slowly stirring instant coffee with a chip spoon, staring at the USB drive I'd hidden in the back of the drawer behind old appliance manuals. That USB drive held everything. Not just the patent documents, not just the final contract from the buyer, but proof. Voice memos, design logs, video demos. I documented the whole journey of the invention. At first, it was just for me, like a journal. I'm not good with emotions, so I built things. But somewhere along the way, I realized I had quietly created something revolutionary. Something people like Mallory would never believe came from someone like me. And so I kept it hidden. It was mine, not ours. That was the same week she came back to the house one last time. She claimed she forgot a few things. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I was wearing old sweatpants and an old fleece. She strolled in with her hair blown out, heels clicking, wearing a beige coat that screamed wealth without warmth. I asked if she needed help carrying anything. She just glanced at me, then rolled her eyes and walked past like I was the guy who fixed her internet, not the man she married. That's when I noticed something. She wasn't alone. Her phone rang, and when she picked up, she smiled, really smiled, that smile I hadn't seen in years. I heard her say, "Yeah, babe, I'll be done soon. Just collecting the scraps." She called our life scraps. The conversation was short, but it told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't just upgrading, she had already replaced me. Probably had for months. All those late networking events. All those spa weekends with no tan lines. All those dinners where she came home wearing lipstick I never saw her put on. It wasn't paranoia. It was strategy. I was the filler chapter between her real romances. The safe pit stop. I said nothing. I let her walk in and out, grabbing whatever decor and kitchen gadgets she wanted. I watched her take the espresso machine I bought her for our 6th anniversary, the monogram towels from her mother, even the plants I watered more than she ever did. And then, right before she left, she paused and looked at me. "You're being really chill about this," she said. "No breakdowns. No begging. That's a surprise." I wanted to tell her. Right then, I wanted to say, "You know what's really surprising? That you think you're leaving the loser in this story." But I didn't. I just gave her a half smile and said, "I guess I'm full of surprises." She laughed, tossed her hair over her shoulder, and walked out with her little trophy bag of things she thought mattered. She didn't know the biggest thing was never in the house. It was in that USB drive, and it was already signed, sealed, and wired into an account with my name, and mine alone, on it. But something changed in me that day. That laugh, that smug tone. It wasn't just insulting, it was clarifying. I realized I didn't want her to just not have the money. I wanted her to feel what it meant to underestimate someone. So I did something I swore I'd never do. I told someone. Not her, but someone close to her. Someone who always used to tell me, "You're too soft for a woman like Mallory." Her older sister. And that's when the cracks started to form. What Mallory's sister told me next not only changed everything, it nearly made me pull the plug on my plan entirely. I hadn't spoken to Mallory's sister, Paige, in over 2 years. We were never particularly close. She was sharp in ways that made me nervous. Unlike Mallory, Paige never sugarcoated anything. She had this no-nonsense energy, like she could spot a lie before it even left your throat. But I remembered something she said to me once at a Thanksgiving dinner, years ago, when Mallory had ditched the table early to take a call from a client. "You know," Paige said back then, sipping a glass of wine while peeling the label, "you're a sweet guy. But Mallory doesn't do sweet. She does shiny." That line sat with me for years. It resurfaced the moment I decided to contact her. I sent a message. Short, unassuming. Just, "Hey, you got time for a coffee?" To my surprise, she replied in under 2 minutes. "Sure. What's going on?" We met at a small corner cafe, the kind with uneven chairs and handwritten chalk menus. Paige arrived before me, already sipping a flat white, her hair pulled back, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She didn't smile when she saw me, just raised an eyebrow like she was waiting for a confession. I sat down, fidgeted with the napkin, and finally said, "I wanted to tell someone. Someone who might believe me." She tilted her head. "Believe you about what?" I handed her the USB drive. She took it slowly, cautiously, like I'd passed her a detonator. "What's this?" "My life's work," I said quietly. "Mallory never knew about it. I sold the patent last week. 67 million. Not a typo. Million." Paige's face didn't change at first, but her hands did. She gripped the drive tighter, her eyes scanning mine like she was testing for sarcasm. When she realized I wasn't joking, she let out a long exhale and leaned back in her chair. "Holy hell, Lenny. I didn't tell her," I said. "I let her file. I let her take everything. Because I wanted her to think she was winning. I wanted her to underestimate me." Paige didn't speak for a moment. Then she leaned forward again and said something that I didn't expect, something that sent my stomach into a freefall. "Mallory's not just with Jake," she said. "That's what she wants everyone to think. But Jake's married. He's not leaving his wife. Mallory, she's been seeing someone else too. Someone she thinks will bankroll her next life chapter. She's calling it her relaunch." I stared at her, numb. "She's trying to get pregnant," Paige continued, dropping the words like stones into water. "With him. Because he has money. But she doesn't know his company is tanking. She's betting on a sinking ship." I sat there for what felt like an hour. The air in the cafe felt thick, like trying to breathe through syrup. I hadn't even processed my own betrayal, and now I was being served hers, in layers. "Why are you telling me this?" I finally asked. Paige looked me straight in the eye. "Because I'm tired of watching her destroy good people and walk away clean. You may be soft, Lenny, but you're not stupid. And maybe it's time someone pulled back the curtain on her little queen act." We parted with no promises. She took the USB with her. I trusted her for reasons I still can't fully explain. Maybe because she was the only one who ever warned me. Or maybe because she looked genuinely disgusted by what her sister had become. 2 nights later, something strange happened. Mallory texted me. Not the usual cold, transactional tone. No, This time, it was soft, curiously warm. She asked how I was doing. She said she was just thinking about everything, and that maybe she had been too quick to finalize things. She even asked if I wanted to grab dinner sometime, just to talk. I knew, instantly, that Paige had told her something, but I didn't know how much. And I had no idea what game Mallory thought she was playing, trying to crawl back toward a man she believed was a broken nobody. So I agreed to dinner. But I had no intention of talking. I had a plan, and it started with a reservation in her name. I made the reservation under her name, Mallory Quayle, even though legally she had dropped my last name a week earlier. I wanted the maitre d' to call it out loud. I wanted her to hear it one more time, in a room full of polished strangers, so she could feel the weight of everything she'd tossed aside. It was petty, I admit that. But after everything, I felt entitled to one small moment of psychological justice. She chose the place, a minimalist French bistro with hanging Edison bulbs and tiny portions on oversized plates. I arrived 15 minutes early, not because I was excited, but because I needed to control the environment. I needed to watch her walk in, to study her entrance, see if she'd hesitate, see if the predator in her had softened now that she suspected her prey might be holding something sharp. She walked in wearing that navy silk dress, the one I bought her on a trip to Denver years ago when things still felt real. She looked radiant, confident, dangerous, a weapon dressed in elegance. And when she saw me, she smiled, a slow, careful smile like she was threading a needle through my chest. "You look good," she said, as if the last 6 months were just a hiccup in a romance novel. I forced a laugh and stood to pull her chair. "So do you?" We ordered wine. She went with the same Pinot she always did, as if this was a date and not a collision. I let her talk first. I wanted to hear what flavor of manipulation she was serving tonight. It didn't take long. "I've been thinking," she said, tracing the rim of her glass with her finger. "About us. About everything. Maybe we moved too fast. I don't know. Maybe I was just scared." "Scared of what?" I asked, genuinely curious. She looked at me like I was simple. "Scared that you'd never become something. That I'd be stuck. And I didn't want to feel trapped." Her honesty stung, but it was old pain now, scabbed over, almost numb. "And now?" I asked. "Now I wonder if I gave up too soon." "You've changed. You're calmer, more confident." "I don't know. I miss that." I nearly burst out laughing. I had never been calmer or more confident. I was still the same awkward, overthinking, overly polite Lenny she'd walked out on. The only thing that had changed was the size of my bank account. And somehow, without seeing a single digit of it, she felt it, like a scent in the air. Mallory could always sniff out money like a bloodhound on a velvet leash. I nodded, playing along. "I guess we all evolve." "Do we?" she said, her voice soft now. "Because I keep thinking about you. About what we had." That's when I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the ring box. Her eyes widened. Not in love. In calculation. I saw it immediately. She didn't blink. She was assessing the size of the box, the weight of the moment. Her mind went straight to the possibility. He wants me back. He's proposing again. And in that flash of pure self-interest, I felt nothing but clarity. I slid the box across the table and said, "Open it." She bit her lip, her fake little nervous habit, and slowly lifted the lid. Inside wasn't a ring. It was the original prenup she'd made me tear up the year we got married. The one she claimed was a barrier to trust. The one I'd scanned and kept anyway. And on top of it was a flash drive. A newer one. Smaller. Sleeker. She stared at it. "What is this?" she asked. "That's the fortune you walked away from," I said, my voice steady for once. "And the contract that made sure you'll never touch it." Her hand trembled slightly. "I don't understand." "I sold the patent, Mallory. 67 million. Clean. Sealed. In a trust. Untouchable." She blinked. The room got very quiet. She didn't reach for her wine. She didn't even breathe. "You lied to me," she whispered. "No," I said. "I just didn't correct your assumptions." Her voice turned sharp. "Why would you do this?" "Because I wanted you to know," I replied, leaning in, "that the man you laughed at, the man you called a failure, he was building something. Not just tech, but a version of himself you never got to meet. And now, you never will." She looked like she wanted to throw the wine in my face, but she didn't. Mallory didn't like public scenes unless she controlled them. And right now, she was losing ground with every second. I stood up, buttoned my coat, and left her sitting there. I didn't pay the bill. That was hers to deal with, like everything else she thought she wanted. Outside, the air was cold and honest. But this wasn't the end. Because Paige had texted me while I was at the table. 2 words, she knows. And that meant someone else was watching me now. I didn't go home after the dinner. I walked. Through half-lit streets and past shuttered storefronts. I just kept walking. I needed space to think, and not the kind that happens behind a steering wheel or in a room full of echoing furniture. Real thinking, the kind that slices you open without anesthesia. Paige's message haunted me. She knows. That's all it said. 2 words. No context. No follow-up. And I knew exactly who she meant. Mallory. Somehow, somewhere, the line between confidant and saboteur had blurred. I had trusted Paige. I had handed her the flash drive, told her the truth, sat with her in that cafe like we were 2 detectives piecing together her sister's betrayal. And now, I was suddenly unsure whether she was ever on my side. I didn't reply to her text. Instead, I turned around and walked straight back toward her apartment building, a beige brick complex on the edge of the arts district with too many intercom buttons and not enough security. When she answered the door, she looked surprised. She was wearing an oversized hoodie and no makeup, her hair tied up in a way Mallory would never allow in public. She was holding a half-eaten granola bar. "You shouldn't be here," she said instantly. "And yet here I am." She stepped aside without protest. The inside smelled like patchouli and old textbooks. I walked straight to her tiny couch and sat down, not waiting for permission. "Why did you text me that?" I asked. She didn't sit. She stood near the kitchen, arms crossed, face unreadable. "Because I think you should know what's coming." "Coming from who?" Paige exhaled slowly. "Mallory has a new plan." I leaned forward. "Tell me everything." She did. According to Paige, the moment Mallory found out about the sale, the possibility of that kind of money, something shifted in her. She didn't rage or spiral. She calculated. Mallory had always been surgical when it came to strategy. She didn't throw tantrums. She drafted blueprints. Her new idea? Reclaim me. Publicly. Charmingly. Rebuild the marriage. Present herself as the supportive, forgiving ex-wife who wanted to heal old wounds. She was going to gaslight the entire narrative. Make it seem like I had walked away too fast. That I was the selfish one. And then, once she was back in the picture, once the legal dust settled, she'd file again. But this time, with knowledge of the hidden account. It was brilliant, cold-blooded, and terrifyingly believable. "She told me she doesn't care about you," Paige said, her voice shaking now. "She cares about winning. She doesn't like that you came out ahead. She's obsessed with it." "And what about you?" I asked. "Whose side are you on, Paige?" That's when she walked over, sat across from me, and said something I never expected. "I used to envy you. Not because of her. But because you still believed in her when the rest of us had stopped years ago." My silence said everything. "I'm not helping her," she added. "I warned you because she's spiraling. And because," she hesitated, "because there's something else I haven't told you." I braced for another gut punch. "She knew about your patent." I stared at her, stunned. "What?" Paige nodded. "Not all of it. But enough. A year ago, she found some of your sketches. She showed them to a guy she was seeing on the side. He told her they were nothing special. She laughed it off. "Thought you were just doodling again." She never imagined you'd actually file. She dismissed you. But I remembered. I couldn't breathe for a moment. "You knew." I whispered. "And you never said anything?" Paige looked genuinely remorseful. "I thought it was just one of your side projects. I didn't realize it would turn into this." My head spun. The betrayal wasn't just Mallory's now. It had expanded, seeped into everything. My life had been a silent battleground I didn't even know I was walking through. And the people closest to me had been stepping around landmines without warning me. "I need to think," I said quietly. Paige nodded. "I get it." But as I stood to leave, she reached out and grabbed my wrist. Not in a romantic way, not even in a pleading one. Just firm, solid, honest. "There's more, Lenny. And you're not going to like it. But you deserve to know." I looked at her. And in that moment, I knew whatever came next wasn't just going to shake my past. It was going to rewire everything I thought I understood about Mallory, and maybe even myself. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my car for hours in the parking lot outside my apartment building, watching as windows flickered out one by one like dying stars. The world was moving on around me, and I was stuck inside a memory that suddenly didn't feel like it ever belonged to me. I kept replaying Paige's words over and over again in my mind. "There's more, and you're not going to like it." She texted me again around 3 a.m. It was a single line, Come back. You need to see something. I almost didn't. Every part of me screamed to draw the line, to let the dead stay buried. But I went. Maybe because I already knew that the ghost wasn't going to stay dead whether I wanted it to or not. Maybe because deep down, I wanted the full picture, even if it shattered what little sense of closure I had left. When she opened the door this time, Paige didn't say a word. She was still in the same hoodie, her eyes bloodshot, like she hadn't slept either. She turned and walked into her bedroom, and I followed, too exhausted to ask anything. She pulled a box from the back of her closet. It was one of those faux leather storage cubes people use to hide old tax forms and half-broken chargers. She set it on the floor between us, opened it, and started pulling things out. A folder. A set of printed emails. A spiral-bound notebook with our wedding date written on the inside cover, not in my handwriting. And then, a photograph. It was old. Probably 9 or 10 years ago. Mallory, smiling with someone I didn't recognize. A man. Tall, narrow face. Sharp jaw. Wearing a suit and standing too close. She was kissing him on the cheek. His hand was on her waist, too familiar, too relaxed. Who is that? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. His name is Owen, Paige said quietly. He worked with her at her first job in Chicago. You never met him because she cut things off right before she moved in with you. Or, at least that's what she told everyone. She handed me a printed email chain between Mallory and Owen, dated 4 months after we got married. They weren't just emailing. They were planning a weekend trip. I thought they ended before us, I muttered. They didn't, Paige said. She kept it going. At least for the first 2 years. They met up in Cleveland once. He paid for the hotel. It's all in the emails. My hands were shaking as I flipped through them. The tone was casual. Familiar. Romantic. She called him, oh. Signed her emails with "You're read." It was undeniable. She had been unfaithful from the beginning. Every anniversary, every fight, every quiet Sunday morning when I thought she was content, it had all been laced with a lie so old it had fossilized beneath her wedding band. But Paige wasn't finished. She was pregnant once, she added, almost like she didn't want to say it out loud. I know you remember. The miscarriage. But. I looked up sharply. She told Owen first, she said, eyes glistening. Not you. Him. I couldn't breathe. That moment, I remember it too vividly. Mallory sitting on the edge of the bed, holding a tissue, telling me through tears that she had lost the baby. I held her. I canceled work. I made soup. I thought it brought us closer. But she had written to him about it first. The email was printed and paperclipped to the rest. I didn't want to read it, but my eyes locked on one line before I could look away. It wasn't yours, and now I'll never have to tell him. The room spun. The floor felt unsteady. I stood up fast, backing away from the box like it might explode. Paige didn't move. She just sat there with her arms around her knees, watching me with quiet pity. I didn't want to believe it either, she said. But she told me. Years ago. Said it was a mistake, and she thought she could outrun it. My voice came out cracked. Why are you showing me this now? Because the version of you she remembers, the man who would have forgiven anything, is dead, Paige whispered. And the man you've become deserves to know the full truth. I left without another word. I didn't cry in the car. I didn't scream or punch the steering wheel. I just drove. Past midnight diners. Through amber-lit intersections. Into a version of myself that had nothing left to salvage from the past. Mallory had burned it all to the ground long before the divorce papers. All I had left was the future. And a deep, burning question that wouldn't leave me alone. How do you make peace with a life that was never really yours? I didn't even remember driving there. The streets were a blur, the road signs foreign, and the GPS voice just another layer of noise beneath the roar inside my head. I parked across from a plain brick building with faded green shutters and a crooked mailbox that read, "Oh, Devlin." I sat in my car, engine running, hands cold on the wheel. I knew it was him. Owen Devlin. The man from the photos. The man from the emails. The one Mallory had once considered real enough to risk it all for, even if she later buried the truth beneath years of half-hearted commitment to me. I had no plan when I rang his doorbell. No rehearsed speech. No intention to fight. I just needed to see him. To understand what kind of man could pull a woman so completely into his orbit that she'd lie about an entire life just to keep his memory sacred. He answered the door in joggers and a wrinkled college sweatshirt, blinking like I'd woken him from a long nap. He looked older than I expected. Tired. Hollow around the eyes. Not the alpha villain I imagined. Not the smug homewrecker. Just a man. One who recognized me before I even spoke. "You're Mallory's ex," he said softly. I nodded. He didn't invite me in. Just stepped outside and closed the door behind him. We stood on the porch, two ghosts from the same unfinished chapter. He didn't look proud. He looked regretful. "I figured this day might come," he said. "I just want answers," I managed. He didn't dodge. "She never told you everything, huh?" I laughed bitterly. "She told me nothing. You're just part of the pile now." He leaned on the porch railing and stared out at the dead lawn. "We were stupid. It wasn't supposed to mean anything at first. She said you were just a safe bet. She told me you didn't really see her, that you were so focused on your gadgets and ideas that you didn't notice she was slipping away." I clenched my fists. Not in anger at him, at myself. Because part of that sounded true. I had believed so hard in the fantasy of her love that I hadn't noticed when the shape of it changed. "She told me she lost the baby," I said, my voice low. "She didn't tell me it wasn't mine." Owen's face dropped. "She wasn't going to. She thought I'd leave. She panicked." "And did you?" He looked me straight in the eye. "Yes." Silence stretched between us like a crack in the pavement. "I left because I realized I wasn't in love with her," he said. "I liked the attention. I liked the danger. But the way she talked about you, it was obsessive, not affectionate. She didn't just want to replace you. She wanted to rewrite you." That line stuck in my head. Rewrite me. That's what this had been all along. Not just deception or reinvention. She'd been curating her life story like a brand, omitting, editing, filtering, and I'd been the placeholder husband in the early chapters before she launched her real identity. "She tried to contact me last week," Owen added. "Told me you came into money. Asked if I'd help her. Expose you." That got my full attention. "Expose me how?" I asked sharply. "She said she could spin it. Make it seem like you forged some of the patent data. That you'd used her designs without credit. She had notes you left lying around years ago. Old sketches. Email timestamps. She said if I'd vouch for her story, she could cut me in." I stared at him. "You didn't say yes, did you?" He shook his head. "I'm not proud of what I did, but I'm not that guy. I told her to leave me out of it. Then I blocked her number." A cold wave washed over me. Mallory hadn't just been scheming to win me back. She'd been plotting to burn me down if I didn't bend. She wasn't coming back out of love. She was coming back out of strategy. That's when I knew I had no choice. She wasn't going to give up, and I wasn't going to be the quiet casualty in her next reinvention. "Thank you," I said, voice dry. He nodded. "Be careful. She doesn't lose quietly." I walked away with one final glance at the house. It didn't feel like a villain's lair. Just another stop in a trail of manipulation she left behind like breadcrumbs for the next man to follow and choke on. That night, I went home and opened the file Paige had given me again. I printed everything. The emails. The photos. Even Owen's statement that he sent after I texted him for confirmation. I put it all in a folder. Then I made a call. To someone Mallory would never expect. Her future employer. Mallory always underestimated paper. She lived in a world of impressions, curated social media, stylized emails, blurred lines of truth that favored whoever shouted loudest with a better filter. But some things still held weight. A printed photo. A timestamped email. A notarized affidavit from a man who once thought he loved her. She never saw the folder coming. Her new job, the one she'd told her friends was her rebirth, was at a luxury real estate firm in Chicago. Boutique, selective, built on reputation. The founder prided himself on integrity and publicly called his staff a family. So when I emailed him a professionally written, quietly factual packet of verified documents that painted a clear picture of her manipulations, affairs, and false claims of intellectual contribution to my patent, I didn't need to embellish a single line. I never accused. I never threatened. I simply told the truth. 3 days later, she was fired. No call. No email. Not even a tantrum. Just silence. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of silence anymore. The next time I saw Mallory was at a mutual friend's gathering, a birthday dinner for someone we both knew before everything exploded. I hadn't planned to go, but Paige convinced me. Said it would be healing. That word used to annoy me. But that night, it felt earned. Mallory walked in late. Her eyes found me instantly. She looked thinner. Not glamorous thin. Just worn. She didn't come near me. But on her way out, she paused behind me and whispered, "I know what you did." I turned, looked at her calmly, and replied, "No, Mallory. You know what you did. I just stopped covering for it." She didn't respond. Just blinked slowly and left. And just like that, she was gone. No explosion. No courtroom drama. Just a closing door and a silence that didn't need filling anymore. In the months that followed, my life changed, not because of the money, but because I finally stepped into it. I invested in small tech startups run by underdog inventors who reminded me of, well, me. I rented a quiet loft downtown, nothing flashy, but full of light and room for ideas. And I started something I never thought I'd have the nerve to do, teaching. A weekly workshop for kids who were told they think too much or dream too weird. As for Paige, we didn't become a couple. That would have been too neat, too forced. But we became something better, honest friends. We check in. We laugh. She says I finally blink differently, that I see the world now without trying to fix every broken thing in it. And maybe the best part? I started writing again. Not code. Not patents. Stories. Little stories about quiet people doing impossible things, even when no one believes in them. People like me. And now, maybe, people like you. Thanks for reading. Wherever you are, don't let anyone convince you that your silence means surrender. Sometimes, it just means you're waiting for the right moment to speak. And when you do, let it be the truth that finishes the story.